I'm David Lefkowitz. I'm here to document my work that's in this show, Impact at the Bloomington Art Center, a show of 3 artists, all making work about the human impact on the natural environment. A lot of my work is motivated by the relation between the natural world and the human-built environment. This particular body of work is called Cultivars, and they're these paintings on birch plywood of sort of unlikely topiary structures. And topiary, seems to me, embodies that tension our culture has between desiring things about the natural world but wanting total control over them too. There's sort of a conflict between this romantic ideal we have of nature and the way we actually use resources. And so the work sort of is about that. First, the fact it's on its birch plywood, which is automatically this mediated natural substance. And the imagery is of things that suggest nature, but in sort of a distorted, warped kind of way. This particular one is based on, it's basically a topiary structure of Le Corbusier's famous Via Savoy. And in some ways, this little window was looked at in the original building over a porch, that was in a porch that was supposed to create a picture of nature that you would look out on. And I thought inverting that would be a nice sort of play, a sort of paradoxical take on that particular modernist ideal of that separation from nature by making it this highly artificial, constructed natural form. The materials I use and the particular way these are painted is actually, it's also sort of a paradox between using a style of painting, sort of more of a pointillism that refers to Georges Seurat or Paul Signac, these early impressionists who had this very sort of scientific, mathematical way of thinking about color and how to apply it to a surface. And it's ironic to depict shrubbery or foliage this way. It becomes more literal to paint in this way that originally was not meant to literalize something, was doing the opposite. Juxtaposing the imagery, isolating it on this ground of plywood and this sort of non-space is another way to emphasize the artifice of the imagery that I'm working with. The way these are made is a fairly meticulous process. Because they're oil paint, and you don't really want the oil paint interfering with the raw ground of the plywood, so I have to paint a gessoed ground over the whole thing and get those edges that are going to eventually read as leaves. And then I do an underpainting of the complementary colors. And then I just meticulously make these little marks and gradually build up that surface. There's lots of different shades of green in this, and others are blues and oranges, and it's the range of those tones and the proportion of each of them that really give it the kind of visual punch that it ends up having. So this piece is part of a series of work I've done on cardboard. I love using a lot of materials that are otherwise cast off, that are otherwise discarded, and I've made an imagery on here that could ostensibly just be stacks of cardboard boxes, but also reads architecturally. And this is called International Headquarters Obscured by Landscaping. And I like that idea of putting the position of nature as something in the way, sort of as a weed in a way. And the idea of landscaping is, again, this very human, organized, ordered version of the natural world. I don't want to get them to get one particular meaning from the work. I would hope that they're attracted first visually by the work, but that it starts to complicate the notion of what we think about nature. It's a lot more complicated than just nature's out there and we're in here, that we are constantly interacting, and I think the more cognizant we are of that, the more we can have a positive effect on that interaction.
Minnesota Original is made possible by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.